President Donald Trump has again said that he's committed to the US ownership of Gaza, suggesting it should buy the territory. Trump insists he's determined to prevent Hamas moving back in to regain control of Gaza. Speaking on Air Force One on the way to the Super Bowl, the president also said other Middle Eastern states may be allowed to help rebuild parts of Gaza. And he said he was open to allowing some Palestinian refugees into the US. Now, Trump caused consternation when he first suggested a week ago that the US should take over Gaza. Now he's talking about a transaction.
I'm committed to buying and owning Gaza. As far as us rebuilding it, we may give it to other states in the Middle East to build sections of it. Other people may do it through our auspices, but we're committed to owning it, taking it, and making sure that Hamas doesn't move back. There's nothing to move back into. The place is a demolition site.
Right, Laura Blumenfeld is a Middle East analyst at Johns Hopkins University and has the task of talking us through this. She joins us from Palm Beach, Florida. We've just heard Donald Trump is committed to buying and owning Gaza. As a starting point, Laura, how would you see this transaction happening?
Trump's always been a size matters guy. And so the way he explained it on Air Force One is that he wants to make America bigger, stronger, and better. It's very important to understand he was in Air Force One flying over the newly renamed Gulf of America, what used to be Gulf of Mexico. And when he was asked, had he checked with the Mexicans, he said no, as a matter of fact. So look, this isn't just about Gaza. It's about Canada. It's about Panama, Greenland. He's almost like, the blob that ate New York, that old science fiction movie. He's looking to gobble up territory. So it's not clear that it's realistic, that it's literal, but we should take him seriously, if not literally, because he is intent on expanding our borders.
Yeah, this plan of taking over Gaza also includes Palestinians leaving Gaza. Trump says Middle Eastern nations will take Palestinians after he talks to them. Do you see Trump being able to convince Middle Eastern countries to resettle 2 million Palestinians?
Well, he's been dancing back and forth about whether it be a forcible transfer or just, voluntary. But I think what he's really saying, and we do need translators to translate, from Trump to language that the rest of us understand. There are some heads of state for Jordan, Egypt, perhaps Saudi Arabia, who will be coming to Washington. What he's saying to them basically is make us a counteroffer. Bring us a realistic proposal for how you foresee the future in Gaza, how you see rebuilding it, sort of with governing it. Bring me something that works. Perhaps that means real reform in the Palestinian Authority. Under the Biden administration, they asked for it and there was no reform. How would you de-weaponize the Hamas? How would you get them out of there, if not forcibly? What he's doing right now, he's kind of playing kind of mafia and using Israel as his kind of enforcement arm. I think he's saying, you can do better. Show me what you got.
As we await this Trump translation, if you like, Palestinian activists say that Trump's plan towards Gaza is tilted towards Israel. We have seen that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has fully endorsed this plan, calling it revolutionary and creative. Is Israel the only winner in this Trump scenario acquisition?
I don't think Israelis feel like winners. I think this incentivizes radicals on both sides. So maybe the radical right in Israel, is happy with this, but I don't think mainstream Israelis are, because they understand it's not a realistic proposal. So I think that, what's happening here is Netanyahu sort of getting trapped by his own success with this meeting that he said was, the best ever. But what other choice does he have? His one request before the meeting that he had at the White House with Trump was that there be no daylight between him and the United States, because our enemies, as he put it, meaning Iran, will take advantage of that. So I think Trump's kind of boxed Netanyahu in, and it's not clear at all that he's happy. He's smiling on the outside, but I think there's a lot of twisted nerves and guts on the inside.
At this moment, Laura, I think it's a good time to remind us, what are some of the major concerns Palestinians and other rights groups would have with this idea, this proposal of forcing Palestinians to leave Gaza?
Again, the word forcing, it's not clear. They've gone back and forth about whether this would be voluntary or not. Netanyahu gave an interview to Fox News saying it would be completely voluntary and that there are, folks in war zones all over the world, and the right thing to do is to give them the opportunity to get out. So I think that's the very first thing that needs to be understood. And second of all, will they have the opportunity to come back? I know that there are Jews living in Israel who are expelled from Yemen, from Iraq, from Morocco, from Syria. They never had the opportunity to go back to their homes in Arab lands, and so they're living in Israel now. So the same question would be, would the Palestinians be allowed back in Gaza? A final question would be, what about the West Bank, or what the Israelis, the right-wing Israelis, call Judea and Samaria? Is this telling us something about annexation? Is this telling us something about a future Palestinian state? Those are all questions. Trump loves the kind of fog and drama of it all, and here we are sorting it out.
Yeah, lots of fog and drama to go, I would suggest. Laura Blumenfeld, thanks so much for talking us through it, Middle East analyst at the Johns Hopkins University. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now, in other developments, an Israeli delegation has arrived in Qatar for more talks on the ceasefire in Gaza. Israel has completed its withdrawal from the Netzarim corridor, dividing northern Gaza from the south. The Israeli military presence there was making it difficult for huge numbers of displaced Palestinians to return to their homes. Now they are heading back.
A steady stream of Palestinians in cars and carts, some loaded with belongings, returned to northern Gaza through the Netzarim corridor. As part of its ceasefire deal with Hamas, Israel agreed to withdraw all of its forces from the key military zone in Gaza.
Today, I travelled north to check the situation. Thank God the road is good and the Israeli army is gone. It will be good as long as we can get back and everyone is able to return.
The Netzarim corridor is a 6-kilometre strip of land stretching from the Mediterranean Sea to the border with Israel. It was created in the days following the October 7th attacks by Hamas. After pulling out of the western side along the coast a few weeks ago, Israel has now withdrawn all of its troops from the key military corridor. But Palestinians hoping to get across without incident arrived at this major checkpoint along the Netzarim corridor to find U.S. and Egyptian security contractors guarding the crossing and screening for weapons.
At first, we felt happy that the road was open, but we were surprised to find there are obstacles at this checkpoint. My children and I have been here for more than an hour, and the movement of cars in both directions is not normal.
When they do make it across, many are stunned by the scenes of destruction. Some 700,000 Palestinians fled from northern Gaza to the south at the start of the war, when Israel issued mass evacuation orders before launching its ground offensive. The hope is that the Israeli military withdrawal from Netzarim will facilitate easier movement for all vehicles, including aid trucks, to the northern part of the Gaza Strip.
All right, let's bring in Mirette Mabrouk. She's a senior fellow at the Middle East Institute in Washington, D.C. Great to have you with us as Israeli forces withdraw from the Netzarim corridor, but US contractors are supposed to be on the ground there. Can you give us a sense of how things are playing out?
So I think, first of all, thank you for having me on. So I think what we can see now is that there is a slow but steady movement of people back on their way back, because one of the conditions that the Israelis had placed was that Palestinians would be allowed back, but they couldn't be armed. And I think people are incredibly worried at how fragile the ceasefire is. So I think that probably explains the checkpoints, but they are making their way back slowly but surely.
President Trump, Mirette, has said he will be meeting with Saudi and Egyptian leaders. He says the Middle Eastern nations will take Palestinians after he talks to them. Do you see Trump being able to implement his plan for the US takeover of Gaza?
So short answer, no. I think what people keep trying to do is second guess President Trump, because I think everyone has learned that he will often say something to perhaps set the mood or set a negotiating tactic, and then sort of work his way down from there. If that was the case, if that was the intention in this case, I think it's probably backfired, because I think what it's done is pull all the Arab states together in a way that perhaps they hadn't been together before. The Jordanians and the Egyptians have already said flat out that they are not going to take Palestinian refugees for two reasons. One, they refuse to be complicit in another mass ethnic displacement. And two, there are security issues there because you don't know who's going to be coming across the border, and what you don't want is another armed struggle from someone else's country back at the Israelis, and that would lead to a huge conflagration. The Saudi Arabia, which is so vital to President Trump's vision of this peace, has, had before been willing to negotiate, but I think after everything that has happened, has flat out come out and said, we are not going to do this. There will be no normalization if Palestinians are moved out. We categorically reject it, and there will be no compromise on it. So I don't think there will be very much movement on that.
You did talk about the fragility of the ceasefire. An Israeli delegation has arrived in Doha for more ceasefire talks. What can we expect? I sincerely hope I'm wrong, but probably not very much. It's a very low-level, last I heard, it was a low-level delegation, which means that they don't have very much power, which means that their negotiation efforts will be limited. There is enormous fear throughout the region, but particularly in Israel, that Prime Minister Netanyahu is going to try and scupper this deal. He hasn't wanted it before, and according to his former Minister of National Security, Itamar Ben-Gvir, they'd been responsible for scuppering this deal several times before. And now the Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich has said that he will leave the coalition if the deal goes through. So there is serious concern that this deal is going to collapse. So I think there is an enormous amount of concern about that. Mirette Mabrouk, Senior Fellow at the Middle East Institute in Washington, D.C. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.